November 9th is come and gone, and boy, did it not disappoint with Alabama LSU. I think it was an unexpected outcome, Gray. We messed up a little bit in what we predicted what would happen. We thought it'd be a lot closer. Final score 42-13. Alabama goes into Death Valley, takes care of business on a rainy Saturday night. We definitely did not expect this to happen. We expected it to be a one-score game. That's what we predicted. We did have the winner right. How did we get to this point? Go ahead and break down the game for me, Gray.
I don't know. This is honestly, it was a complete ass kicking, first of all, but second of all, it was shocking to see. I was saying it during the game while watching it. I was like, this looks like the Alabama team went straight from the locker room of the Georgia game in September, straight to the locker room and drove down to Baton Rouge and played this game. Because this is not the Alabama team we've seen for the past couple weeks, especially in Nashville, in Knoxville, even at home against South Carolina. This is not the same Alabama team. This looks like the Alabama team that played that rose to that 28-0 lead over Georgia in Tuscaloosa a couple weeks ago. And it was just shocking to see what the Tide was able to do offensively while also staying strong defensively against this talented LSU offense. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the stat sheet right here in just a second. So right here, just looking at the stat sheet, it's honestly, I called it an ass kicking, but it's just crazy to look at the stat sheet and see a quarterback rush for 12 yards, 185, or 12 attempts, 185 yards, 4 touchdowns, averaging 15 yards a carry. Obviously, the 72-yard long run kind of helps that a little bit, but the fact that Alabama was finally able to they rushed over 300 yards in this game at Death Valley. That's absolutely crazy. 6.5 yards a carry for the team. That is the difference maker. We talked about what was going to be Alabama's way to win this football game, and it had to be they were going to be able to establish a run game. That's exactly what they did. I'm telling you, this looks like the team we saw against Georgia.
Yeah, I think it's definitely nice for them to return and really have some momentum. I believe they're peaking at the right time. You talk about November going into the final few weeks of the season and then into championship week. And then, of course, you had the playoffs after that. It is the right time to start playing like this again. They go in there, absolutely handle business. I think the weather played a huge part in the way this game turned out with it being more run-oriented than anything else. A lot of credit needs to go to that Alabama offensive line. I really think the game was put on their backs, and they took care of business like they should have, executing in spots they should have, controlling the line of scrimmage. I mean, you can go break down almost every single big run play. I mean, people were just taken completely out of the play by the scheme that was put in place by Nick Sheridan. Absolutely fantastic play calling. Jalen Milroe in this game. Like you said, one of the keys to victory for Alabama to win was for Jalen Milroe to be able to make plays. And boy, did he. And I mean, when you have a quarterback like this, he reminds me so much of Lamar Jackson, the way he played Saturday. I mean, 12 attempts, 185 yards, and 4 touchdowns. It takes you back, honestly, to last year when Alabama played LSU at home, and he had 4 rushing touchdowns as well. But the way he was able to read the defense and maneuver his way through, and he just found a hole and he hit it hard. He looks like a running back, honestly. He is just such an impressive player to watch. But then you go and look at the other side of the ball. What did LSU fail to do on defense? It felt like maybe they had a specific plan in place to stop Jalen Milroe, but obviously that didn't work out. What did LSU do wrong on the defensive end, Gray?
I think contain was a big thing. Obviously, we knew the run game was going to be important. You mentioned the weather and how much of an impact it had on this game. Obviously, LSU threw 42 passes in this game. A lot of it was because they were playing from behind, but that was not going to be a recipe for success in this game with the weather the way it was and how successful both of these teams can be at running the football. And I think what LSU kind of got away from or something that has been successful for teams against Alabama this year is staying and contained against Jalen Milroe. Jalen Milroe wasn't running right up the middle into the meat of that LSU defense. No, he was running these off the tackle, getting outside, getting in space, running these option plays as well. And he was getting himself into space because LSU was keying on Jalen Milroe and Justice Haynes. And that's exactly what Georgia did at the very beginning of the game. That's why I kind of mentioned that. It looked exactly what Georgia's defense had in the first quarter against Alabama a couple of weeks ago. And then they were able to adjust and get out and get back into that game and have success. And then Vandy was able to contain Jalen Milroe, and Tennessee was, and South Carolina was. Or just, you're not going to contain Jalen Milroe, but just contain him enough to make him a pocket quarterback, which he can be a pocket quarterback, but that's not his strong suit. That's not what Alabama wants to do. And LSU completely ignored that. It's like they didn't watch film over the past few weeks against Alabama. And it's like they only watched last year's Alabama LSU game and said, man, this guy's really good at running the football. Let's hope we stop him. And they just didn't. And they just never contained Jalen Milroe. And not once Milroe got going on the ground, that opened up so many different things for Alabama. I'm not saying that they were able to sling it through the air or anything like that. They only had 109 passing yards, but he was efficient when he went to the air, considering the weather issues, but also opening things up for guys like Richard Young, Justice Haynes, even Ryan Williams. It's like once Milroe's the key to the offense. Once Milroe gets going on the ground, everything goes well for Alabama.
Yeah, I would have to agree there. It just surprised me how undisciplined LSU played on the defensive end. Saw a lot of people just not staying home and getting caught up in the trick plays and the way Nick Sheridan used motion pre-snap really confused a lot of the LSU defenders. So that was one of the major things. But then you look on the flip side of the ball. You look at LSU on the offensive end, played a completely opposite game from what Alabama did on the offensive end. Garrett Nussmeier, 42 passing attempts in the rain. That is not a recipe for success. I think it's more of a situation. You were down by so much, you had to throw the ball. Credit goes to Alabama's defense. They handled business as well. You talk about shutting down the run game to begin with. They had one big run at the beginning of the game and really tightened up and forced LSU to make plays through the air, and they were not able to do that.
Yeah.
The way Alabama's linebackers play, Deontay Lawson, Jahad Campbell, probably some of the best in the country. They are always looking to hit someone. Jahad Campbell made a huge play earlier on in the game, forcing a fumble. And, of course, putting Alabama in another situation to score. And another huge difference in this game, Alabama forcing 3 turnovers yet again in the game. Their offense this time scoring on every single one of those opportunities. Yeah. That is something they failed to do against Tennessee, and that was one of the reasons they lost there. They did not let that be a problem this time. But, again, a lot of credit. I want to point out another guy, Bryce Hubbard, playing some of his best football right now, stepping in for Keon Sabb. We saw him 2 weeks ago against Missouri. He had a pick in that game. He helped a lot in run support in that game as well. Came into this game, absolutely controlled that left side of the field. LSU tried to test him at times. He ended up with an interception yet again, and he just played a fantastic game, making the best of the opportunity he has been given. But really, Kane Womack and the game plan he came out with absolutely shut down the LSU offense. They were not able to find really anything, any success. The first really drive of the game, they were able to move it down. But other than that, Alabama played a great game on defense.
Yeah, I think a lot of that did, we've talked about the weather and stuff like that and how playing from behind is so much different, especially in college football and especially in a big game like this. You can't afford to keep running the football if you are down. And Nussmeier having 42 passing attempts in a game where there's even in dry weather, he shouldn't have 42 passing attempts against this Alabama defense, especially with the pass rush of guys like Jahad Campbell and Deontay Lawson. I mean, those guys played outstanding in this game. But there's no way Nussmeier should have that many passing attempts, because especially since on that first drive, LSU was able to run the ball right down the field. LSU did not have an unsuccessful day running the football. They averaged over 4.5 yards a carry, but they were playing from behind because Alabama came out and punched them in the mouth and answered the ticket early. So they were playing from behind, had to move away from the running game, which Alabama did not, and that made a huge difference.
Yeah, I want to say a big thing in this game, especially for me, the atmosphere of Baton Rouge. I mean, Death Valley was absolutely crazy. Do you think it played a part that more of the focus was on preparing the stadium for the night rather than actually playing the game? I think that the live tiger in the stadium probably got more of a headline and took away from the situation LSU was in rather than actually playing the game.
Yeah, I think a little bit because everybody talks about how hard it is for an away team to go into an opposing stadium. It is really tough, especially if you don't have a guy like Milroe, who's an experienced quarterback at that position or somebody like that. And LSU is one of, if not the toughest environment to play in general, especially at night. But it also is very hard for the home team. It's very hard to keep your composure when you're so hyped up like that. It's very hard to come out and answer the punch early, especially if the away team is experienced, just like Alabama is, especially if they're as talented as Alabama is. So I do think there was a bit of a problem there. And I do think a little bit of the live tiger on the sideline, the college game day being there, the whole day leading up, the whole 2 weeks leading up to the game, honestly, with both of these teams having bye weeks the week prior, I think that does take away a little bit of the LSU football focus because, I mean, they're focused on make sure they get their media interviews in and making sure everything's going with the atmospheres and stuff like that. But it is the little things. And everybody talks about how hard it is to go win in an opposing stadium. And as much as I agree with that, it's also hard for the home team, especially for their composure.
Yeah. Another key aspect of this game, we talked about the playoff scenario with really the loser of this game, their playoff chances really evaporating, and the winner, I mean, really just having to win out to really secure their spot. Is there any chance that LSU will have an argument if they win out to have a playoff spot? I think you look at number one, their key win being against Ole Miss at home. But other than that, I think you see where they fell short in some areas. But if they went out, do you think they have any shot at all at making the playoff?
I do. It's gonna have to be a everything falls in the right situation though, because especially in the SEC, it's gonna be really tough because there's gonna be so many SEC teams. Is there a fighting chance for LSU to make the playoff if they win out? Yeah, because there's always going to be a chance for a three-loss team to make the playoff, especially in the SEC. But I think LSU needed to win this game more than Alabama needed to win this game. And that really, really hurts their chances. And I think Alabama, on the flip side, has completely locked up a playoff spot whether they go to the SEC championship or not, because they have two marquee wins that are both better than the top win for LSU with their win against Georgia and then the win at Death Valley this past week. So you're not going to put LSU in over an Alabama or right now over a Texas A&M or right now over I can't argue to put them in over Ole Miss, especially after what Ole Miss did this week as well, even though they beat Ole Miss. So it's going to be very, very hard, and everything's going to have to fall in the right spot. So I do think I'm gonna flip and say no, that there's not a chance, but we will at some point see a 3-loss SEC team make that college football playoff. There's no doubt in my mind.
So we're going to go with the 0.1000000, repeating, of course, chance that LSU will make the playoff. Obviously, so many things would have to happen or order for that to fall into place. But, like you said, Alabama in a likely playoff lock scenario, you still have Mercer, what to play coming up this weekend. You still have to go to Norman, Oklahoma. I know that's going to be a tough environment. And then, of course, you have Auburn at home. The Iron Bowl has been very unpredictable in the past. But really, I think this was Alabama's ultimate hurdle in the step to really establishing themselves as a playoff team,
Yeah.
and they answered the call. I think you kind of look back to the games against Tennessee and the games against Vanderbilt, and while there were mistakes in those games, they kind of pinpointed what they did wrong, and they've kind of fixed those issues. And I think if you are an Alabama fan or you're looking to a team to support the playoffs, Alabama is peaking at the right time. It seems like they have fixed their issues, and they are playing with 100% confidence in their ability to really win big games like this. I mean, this was probably one of the biggest games we've seen this year. Going on the road to Death Valley is no joke, but Alabama gets it done, 42-13. I wish we got the team right. We got the pick right.
We did. I also said we both said the under as well.
Yeah. Well, it was raining. I thought it was going to be super run heavy.
Either. Yeah.
But I guess that's just the way it works out. Thank you all for watching. This has been Fan to Fan Sports.